Thank you so much, Dave. That was so beautiful. I have a few announcements this morning. You are invited to the next meeting of our Preserving Democracy team on Thursday, November 4th at 4:30 on Zoom. Come if you're new. Come if you've been part of the team since last year when we all worked so hard. Come if you just want to check us out. Our democracy is threatened as it has never been before. We can't sit back and hope for the best. So bring your ideas, your passion, your questions, so we can brainstorm together about actions we might take during the upcoming election cycles. Next Sunday, we will be celebrating Diwali here in the sanctuary with many guests from our Hindu community, offering music, story, dance, and their wisdom and traditions. Please make sure that you sign up ahead of time, and this might be a really good Sunday to bring your neighbors to a celebration of Diwali. We are also having a Saturday afternoon Diwali event, which will be much smaller than I mentioned last week, but we're going to have an outdoor community art project. So come and be part of that anytime between 4:30 and 6:30. We're creating a huge rangoli on the front steps. There'll be colored sand for you to participate in creating this, and then we'll light candles in the darkness. And Vicki has a short announcement.
Thank you, Anne. My name is Vicki Guo, and I'm very honored to be the auction chair this year, and thank you so much for your support. And I can't believe this is October, the end of October, and November is coming, and we all know auction is coming in November. Two important dates. One is November 6th, which is next Saturday, is when we will, up to then, we're taking donations. And also the auction we'll do online from November 13th to November 20th. And we'll have a online Zoom session for us to get together to do the live auction. And for those already donated, really thank you for your support. For those that are still thinking, and please put it in next week. And we're really, really looking forward to your support and having fun together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our call to worship is by Jeff May, which he wrote for this time of continued pandemic. Come, gather, not into one common space, sharing a physical closeness we long for, precluded by wise choice, but come, gather into this common time and a common space. We need to be together. We yearn for connection. We hunger for the familiar faces of friends, the sound of shared voices, proclaiming who we are and where we are going, that which resonates with our hopes, our dreams, our values. Come, gather. We are here in this space made of all spaces, and we share our becoming in this moment. Our introit this morning is "There Are No Mirrors in My Nana's House."
There are no mirrors in my Nana's house, no mirrors in my Nana's house.
Dum 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 dum
Trash in the rubbish, with cushion like this, and the beauty in every leaf. There was in her the world outside was a magical place. I only knew love and I needed joy. The beauty never really there was in her John looked deep into my eyes. John looked deep into my eyes.
Our chalice lighting this morning is by Florence Kaplow, All Souls Chalice Lighting. As we kindle this flame, we honor and remember those who have passed into the mystery. Their brightness lives in our vision. Their courage lives on in our commitments, and their love continues to bless the world through us. Sometimes it takes just a little extra effort to keep that flame burning. As a covenantal community of wisdom and spirituality, drawing from our 6 sources, I am reminded today of our first source, direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder affirmed by all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life. Please join me in saying our affirmation, which speaks to the experience of worshiping together. Love
is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine.
And now please join me in singing our first hymn, which is For All the Saints.
No, sorry.
Thank you so much. Please be seated. I have the great privilege of inviting our fabric artist, Susan Thompson, to the pulpit. She will be explaining and sharing with us some of her history and skill and ideas in creating the beautiful tapestry that is behind me, which we will be dedicating in a few minutes. Susan.
Thank you so much. This is such a privilege for me to be here and to just share a little bit about myself, my art, and this quilt. This quilt came about, well, it landed in your church because I'm going to call her my sister Connie. She came to me and she wanted to have a piece of my artwork to hang in the church in memory of her husband. And she and her daughter and Sister Helen, they came to my house and they looked through a lot of the quilts that I had. And they went home, they talked about it, and they finally selected this piece. And I called this piece What My Grandmother Taught Me. And when I was a child, my grandmother lived with us. She lived in our home, and she took care of us 3 kids while my parents worked. And she was just always there, either cooking or ironing, washing clothes, looking after us. But on certain days of the week, her friends from the church or whatever, they would come to our home and they would be in our living room and they would all be having their needlework. They would be quilting or sewing and just having a delightful time being with each other and working together. And for me, that's what it's all about, especially quilting. It's coming together and working together. Being a fiber artist, most of the time I work in a vacuum. I work alone, but I found a quilting group which we meet at the library once a week, and it's really wonderful to have people to work with. So the ancestors for me has been a recurring theme in my art. And this is mainly because I'm trying to understand the trauma that my ancestors have collectively experienced. But art has helped me to, come to grips with things, to figure out things. It's a healing process for me. And I'm grateful. I feel it's the divine that works through me and helps me to do my work. So for that, I am thankful. I'm thankful for my life. I'm thankful for you here. It's no accident that I'm here. And thank you so much for welcoming me.
Would you join me in the litany of dedication? And the congregational response is written on the slide, and it is, we hold these threads of beauty and gratitude. Today we dedicate this quilt called What My Grandmother Taught Me, created by Susan Thompson. It was purchased by Connie Counts as a gift in memory of Lou Counts, who designed the very structures upon which this quilt is hung. For the stories contained in these threads,
we hold these threads of beauty and gratitude.
For the prayers which anchor us all,
we hold these threads of beauty and gratitude.
For the ancestors who have taught us lessons,
we hold these threads of beauty and gratitude. For the artist whose vision brings dreams into reality,
we hold these threads of beauty and gratitude.
May this quilt help us to create sacred space wherever and whenever it is seen.
May it remind us to listen to the stories, the prayers, the lessons, and the visions of those who have gone before us.
And may its beauty delight our senses and bring us joy.
We hold these threads of beauty and gratitude.
And we will be hanging this quilt panel of dedication next to this quilt so you can be reminded of what we decided and dedicated today. Thank you. Our offering this morning is Breaths by Issa Barnwell. Please give as generously as you can for the work of this congregation. Feel free to use the QR code that is in your order of service or that you can see online. Thank you so much for your support of this church.
Bum bum ba bum 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 ba bum 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 ba bum 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 ba bum 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 ba bum 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 listen more often to things than to beings. Listen more often to things than to beings. 'Tis the ancestors' breath when the fire's voice is heard. 'Tis the ancestors' breath in the voice of the waters. Those who have died have never, never left. The dead are not under the earth. They are in the rustling trees. They are in the groaning woods. They are in the crying grass. They are in the moaning rocks. The dead are not under the earth. So listen more often to things than to beings. Listen more often to things than to beings. 'Tis the ancestors' breath when the fire's voice is heard. 'Tis the ancestors' breath in the voice of the waters. Those who have died have never, never left. The dead have a pact with the living. They are in the woman's breast. They are in the wailing child. They are with us in our homes. They are with us in this crowd. The dead have a pact with the living. Listen more often to things than to beings. Listen more often to things than to beings. 'Tis the ancestors' breath when his fire's voice is heard. 'Tis his ancestors' breath when his voice of the waters. Our reading this morning
by Charles Dickens. These things shall never die. The pure, the bright, the beautiful that stirred our hearts in youth, the impulses to wordless prayer, the streams of love and truth, the longing after something lost, the spirit's yearning cry, the striving after better hopes. These things can never die. The timid hand stretched forth to aid a brother in his need, a kindly word in grief's dark hour that proves a friend indeed. The plea for mercy softly breathed when justice threatens high, the sorrow of a contrite heart. These things shall never die. Let nothing pass, for every hand must find some work to do. Lose not a chance to waken love. Be firm and just and true. So shall a light that cannot fade beam on thee from on high, and angel voices say to thee, these things shall never die.
On Thursday evening, I was finishing up a long series of Zoom calls in my office. I was the only person in the building, and everything was eerily quiet, which was lovely, actually. But suddenly, in the stillness, I heard something which roused me from my desk. The elevator turned on and began to move. My first thought was, thank goodness it's still working. For those of you who know, it's been a bit iffy. But I want to check and see who might have come in to the building and turned it on. But the foyer was empty. Nobody was there. Well, then I remembered something our previous administrator, Jane Foley, once told me. Perhaps jokingly, perhaps not. She said, whenever that elevator turns on by itself, I know that Charlotte is somewhere around here. Charlotte is how she referred to our first parish ghost. Have any of you ever experienced her? You're among friends, it's okay. Any of you online? I know a few parishioners who claim to have done so over the years, seeing her up in the balcony on a dark night or by the back pews, especially on youth group overnights when they were roaming through the building. Now, I really don't know if an elevator turning itself on and ascending a floor or two is a natural occurrence in an old and crotchety machine like ours, or if Charlotte was making her presence known. I do know that Jane was an excellent administrator who left to spend time as a writer of fiction. So you decide for yourself, but on a day like today, October 31st, it certainly bears consideration, don't you think? My Celtic forebears consider that in this time of year, the veil between the worlds is thin, and we can experience the presence of those who have died in ways we cannot sense at other times of the year. They celebrate the holiday of Samhain when they intentionally are open to the possibility of experiencing the saints, the spirits of their loved ones, crossing between the worlds of life and afterlife. There have been times when I have experienced this myself, truly. Many years ago, I was struggling with making a decision about my own life, and I went to stay with my mother for a week or so to give myself some space to reflect and figure things out. During that week, I connected with some family friends who were still members of the church that I grew up in, and they invited me to come to choir practice. So of course I said yes. I sang in the adult choir when I was in high school, and my father sang there as well. He also loved to sing and had done so all his life. It was something wonderful that he and I shared every week. And when you're one of a family of 4 daughters, having something with your father was really special. So we shared this music, we drove together to rehearsal, we sang the same music and shared my growing love of music. So going to choir practice meant that I would be in the choir pews where he and I had spent many hours rehearsing and singing for church services. Now this was a small traditional Episcopal church with 4 rows of pews for the choir facing each other in the chancel. My dad always sang on the organ side with the other baritones, and I was always on the alto side, on the opposite side. For those of you who do not know, my father died unexpectedly when I was only 17. So that evening, and I was probably 32 at the time, I entered that sanctuary which I had hardly visited in the years after his death. The other singers were very friendly and welcomed me, and we began to rehearse. It felt so good to be there, the smell of the church, the vision of being in those pews, the memories, the space, it all just felt so good. And then it happened. I am sure that I saw my father standing in his usual spot next to old friends who still were singing all those years later. I could feel his presence, and I was sure that I really did see him standing there. I was overwhelmed, and I had to leave the practice in tears. Now that memory has never left me, even when my own logic tells me that no, Anne, it's impossible that you would have actually seen your father standing there so many years after his death. For it wasn't just that I was missing him. I had the sense that he was missing me. I could feel his love for me across the veil between the worlds, and I continue to trust that he did, and he somehow still does love me. Now, I would love to have further conversation with our resident neuroscientist, David Rose, about how the brain works, how a smell or a sound or a much-loved memory might stimulate a response in the back of my brain and make me see something that seems so real. Oh, there are many ways to explain something away, aren't there? And many ways to appreciate new things that we learn about the amazing way that our brains work. But as I continue to process this memory, I'm sparked again by what Charles Dickens said about what never dies. The longing after something lost, the spirit's yearning cry, the striving after better hopes. These things can never die. Longing, yearning, striving. These intangible feelings connect us to a past, present, and future through the realization of not yet. We can vision the world we want, the family we want, the friendships we want. We can long for them with all our heart. And when these ways of being are intertwined with the memory of those we love and have lost, we renew again our connection to their longing, their yearning, and their striving. We always live in a world that is not yet what it could be, as did our ancestors, as will the generations who follow us. Living in the not yet is a touchstone. It is what prevents us from being complacent, and it is what stops us from becoming hopeless. For as Brian Stevenson says, hopelessness is the enemy of justice, and justice prevails where hopelessness persists. Hope is what will get some of us to stand up when others sit down, and will get some of us to speak when others say be quiet, and it becomes a relationship. And so I wonder, what is our relationship with those justice seekers who came before us? Do we connect with their sense of hope? Are we not products of their hope? The justice that does exist today is there because of their sense of hope. And so it is our responsibility to do the same for the generations who follow us. We must kindle and rekindle our sense of hope so that we will keep our longing, our yearning, and our striving for justice. Hopelessness is the enemy of justice. It is very meaningful for me to realize how my parents yearned for justice. When I remember their actions, when I make a donation to the same causes that were important to them, I keep their memory alive. For me and for those who are still affected by that work, it is one more way that I honor their memory. People in every culture have ways to honor the dead and to experience their continued presence in our lives. Yesai Barnwell sings, "Those who have died have never, never left. The dead have a pact with the living. They are all around us, these ancestors." And as Susan said earlier, the ancestors continue to live with us through their lessons, their stories, and our shared memories. Susan, the beauty of this quilt will keep your grandmother's presence, as well as your presence here in our sacred space. I have found it a meaningful practice in my own life to create a special ritual which I perform on the anniversary of the death of someone that I love. I realized its importance when I was in seminary, and I was totally overwhelmed for a number of months by all the sad events that were happening in my life right then. And I remember talking to one of my professors about it, because I found myself in tears many times a day. And as the anniversary of my father's death approached, I was simply at a loss. So Professor Stalfa, of blessed memory, helped me see that I was in what he called a confluence of grief. He and I decided that I would do something intentional on April 1st that year, the day that my father had died. I wanted it to be something life-affirming, something beautiful, and something simple. And so that year I went to one of my favorite places, the garden store, and I bought a flat of pansies, because in Pennsylvania it's actually warm enough to plant pansies in early April. And so on April 1st, I planted pansies in his honor. And I continue to do that every year that it's not snowing here in Massachusetts. It is a simple ritual, but whenever I see that one of those pansies decided to come back the next year all by itself, I'm filled with a ridiculous amount of joy. It feels to me like those pansies are being helped along by my dad. And even though my rational brain, of course, denies that, but I sense his presence that way. And that flash of beauty just brings me happiness. Having a ritual is a strong way to honor grief, and in this year of pandemic, we have foregone so many rituals. We recognize the grief in ritual instead of pretending that we don't feel it. We choose to take an action. We participate in the ritual, and sometimes we can bring other people along with us. The year after my mother died, my spouse and I decided that we must do a ritual for her. So we planted a crabapple tree in her memory, and on the first anniversary of her death, we popped open a bottle of her favorite champagne, and we poured that first glass onto the ground, watering that new tree with memories of her. Just felt like the right thing to do. Family traditions are important to many people. They help to define special holidays. They connect us through the repetition of activities. Sharing traditional foods, especially on those traditional plates, even if they're cracked, that brings a sense of continuity, which really helps me to connect with the past and honor all those with whom I shared that past. But for those facing a holiday without the one they love, these traditions are maybe too painful to repeat this year. So here we are at the end of October, and I'm thinking about Thanksgiving coming up. And as we approach this holiday season, I'd like you to consider a few things. First, who are you missing? And how can you honor them in your planning? Don't let approaching grief catch you unawares. Plan for it, prepare for it, and find a way to work through it. Second, what traditions are you teaching your children? Are you intentional about that? Or do things just kind of keep happening every year for good or for ill? And are there new rituals that you might like to create to replace outdated ones? And third, all members and friends of First Parish, do you have room in your planning to include someone in our community who might be facing the sadness of planning a holiday without their loved ones? Can you make an extra place at your table for them? If so, can you be in touch with me directly and let me know? I want to try and help our community find a way to be joyful through these upcoming holidays. And reaching out is one way that we can truly help each other through these potentially hard times. There are so many things that can help us endure through the losses that we have all experienced. And I hope that you will remember these words of Charles Dickens. Let nothing pass, for every hand must find some work to do. Lose not a chance to waken love. Be firm and just and true. So shall a light that cannot fade beam on thee from on high, and angel voices say to thee, these things shall never die. Amen, and blessed be. Our anthem this morning is You Do Not Walk Alone by Elaine Hagenberg, performed by our sanctuary choir, and I heard them rehearsing this morning, and I cannot wait to hear this performance.
See God's light on the path ahead. When the road you walk is dark, may you always hear in your hour of sorrow the gentle singing
Thank you so much, choir. I hope I remember that sound in my ears when the shadows fall this evening. I'd like to invite you into a time of sharing our joys and sorrows, of listening to the beating of your own heart. If you have joys or sorrows that you'd like to share with the congregation, I invite you to text them to the number which Will is going to show on the screen in just a moment. It's the same number we've been using every week, so I hope you just program it into your phone as prayer or something like that. I know that's not a very you thing to see on your phone, but it's a good thing for us. And if you text it to me, I will read it as part of the pastoral prayer. But now I invite you to sit and watch there's the number. Good. In just a moment, we're going to show a short video that we created with the photographs of beloveds that you sent in this week, some from last year and some from this year, and some people that we've lost years ago. But just sit and be filled with prayer and connection to those of us who have our faces and names up there, and to your own losses in your own life, as we listen to and watch Memoriam while Rip plays with that. Thank you, Rip. Thank you. Will you join me in prayer? Spirit of life and love, we are grateful beyond measure for those who have graced our lives with their love, their presence, their lessons, and their enduring spirit. We honor their place in our hearts this day and every day. And while we will always mourn their absence, gentle spirit of life, let us resolve that we will honor them by the way we choose to live from this day onward. Let us resolve to be better in our living through being more kind, more understanding, and more patient for those who remain in our lives. Help us to transform our grief into a living monument through the beauty and the strength of our own spirits. Help us to remember that our community is formed not only by those who are with us today, but those who have shaped our lives, our institutions, and our families. I ask your prayers this morning for Ben Soul, who had surgery, for John Schmitz, who is recovering from surgery, and for Russ Brahmi, who is still in the hospital. We also hold Bob Erickson, who is in hospice. I am, from people from our audience, great joy and encouragement in the commitment of our congregation moving forward towards greater inclusion from Susanna. And grateful for the reminder from Reverend Ann to turn toward the good, to encourage us to action instead of paralysis that comes from despair. Great sadness at the too early passing of my dear childhood friend, Barbara Lautman. She was a bright light with a great sense of humor, and in the 1980s was responsible for convincing the Surgeon General that gun control is a public health issue when she found herself on a flight sitting next to him because she worked for the nonprofit Handgun Control. For these and all the joys and sorrows that remain unspoken, we say amen and blessed be. Please rise as you are able and join in singing our closing hymn, Abide with Me.
Abide
Thank you. You may be seated. As Rip heads out to the organ to get ready for our postlude, I'd like to share a benediction by Carl Seabury. Between the dawn and dark of our being, let us be brave and loving. In our little passage through the light, let us sustain and forward the human venture in gentleness, in service, and in thought. Our postlude this morning is the Fuga in C major by Johann Pachelbel, performed on our organ by Rip Jackson.
So that comes to the end of our service. Thank everybody for coming here today, and those people who are online, thank you for joining us. You can stay for coffee hour online. There may be breakout rooms or not, and those of you who are here physically, I invite you to go outside where we hope to continue a conversation. So thank you again for coming.
Hi, Ben. Hello, anyone?
Hi, Larry.
Hi.
Oh,
I can't see anyone else.
where am I?
I think
I
we're getting
guess-
sorted into breakout rooms, maybe?
Well, I guess not. This is a small group here.
Oh, are we the only ones?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, there is still 13 people on.
Right.
Well, is that too many?
No, I'm just looking.
Yeah.
It's a
Look.
bunch.
We're
There
looking
we
at
go.
all of them.
Hey,
You
Ben,
go in gallery, you see everybody.
I can
I
see
think that's fine.
I can see everybody.
You can see everybody?
I can see 13
Yeah,
people.
click the view thing in the top
There's three
right
of them.
and then choose gallery and you can see everybody instead of that little row of people.
I want to have that type of artist come in and talk to us. That was profound.
Well, there she is.
Yeah,
I see with Connie.
Yeah.
Mhm.
They are.
Hi, everybody.
Quilt.
But they're
Hello,
actually there. They're not on Zoom. Yeah.
They're not?
Well,
They're in the church.
Oh, okay.
They're sort of on Zoom.
Also on Zoom.
So
Everyone should get
she's
outside.
going to talk to the people in person that are right there with her. So I
Does
wish
she
I
do
were-
other kinds of artwork?
If you go on the email we got from Deep this morning from Pratik, and it talks about the service, I clicked on all about Susan Thompson, and I saw her beautiful quilts, and I would love to go buy one. Yeah, they are gorgeous. I'm hoping there might be a art show happen.
In Parish Hall?
Yeah, I think that's what Connie had been hoping might happen sometime, but
This is my latest.
oh, we're gonna have.
That's
beautiful, Mary. Yeah,
Wow.
I made so many of these pillows.
Oh, well, that's
Nice.
great.
My therapy.
Mm.